1. It had been a few years since this spirit visited me, but last night reminded me of all those horrifying nights as a kid. My paranormal experience seemed insignificant to me as a child, but as I shared them with others, I often got weird looks and concerning comments. These visits occurred pretty often as a kid and teenager, but I'm in my 20s now. Recently, I've been visiting my grandparents down in Florida for the past few nights. My dad and I had to share a room, separate twin beds. He is pretty old and gets up to use the bathroom a lot. I had a very strange and vivid dream, which is very common for me. When I woke up in the middle of the night, I opened my eyes and peeked through the bottom of my eye mask. I saw what I thought to be my father walk from our bedsides to the door to use the restroom. But when I lifted the mask to check on him, my father was sound asleep in his bed a few feet from mine. The dream itself was enough to make me wake up with the feeling of fear, the feeling of some sort of presence added to it. This feeling is familiar to me, so I knew it really wasn't anything to be worried about, as nothing actually bad has really happened from it. I turned in my bed to get comfy and go back to sleep. Then my bed started rocking. It felt like someone was manually pushing the side of it, like a shaking you'd get almost on a boat. I'm really not sure how to describe it other than quite unsettling. It's significant enough to keep me awake, mostly from fear of, what the fuck is shaking my bed? I eventually calmed myself down, and the shaking rocked me back to sleep. Oddly enough, I woke up this morning recalling all the times this occurrence used to happen in my childhood. I brushed off these events as a kid because, well, nothing ever really came of them. I'd wake up at night and either be rocked back to sleep or I'd feel someone touching my back, or other times I'd hear their breath. Sometimes I'd wake up so paralyzed with fear that I was too scared to move with that presence feeling. It would happen in different locations, beds, houses, and even hotels. So whatever it is doesn't seem to be attached to the location but to me, I suppose. I'm not well versed in paranormal events, spirits, ghosts, and whatnot. So I figured maybe someone here could have a theory as to what's going on. My running theory is that some dead relative is trying to comfort me. I was adopted from a very bad household situation out of the country, so I'm not in touch with any blood relatives. For ease of writing, I'll refer to this as a spirit for now. Do spirits follow individual people? Is there someone I could seek that could help identify this spirit and bring some ease of mind to me? Is the overwhelming fear I feel justified? I did later learn that my grandmother lived in the same house as me before I was adopted, when I was just a baby or toddler. I have a feeling it may be her. 2. When I was young, I was a very awkward kid. I had a lot of difficulty making and keeping friends. I spent most of my time hiking outside of my hometown in the Angeles National Forest. I lived with my grandmother in the town of Wrightwood. I would spend most of my nights out camping, claiming to be going on small trips with my Boy Scout troop, when in reality I would just take my backpacking tent and find a nice secluded canyon to sleep in. Whenever I would sleep in the canyon, I would have strange but comforting dreams where my childhood dog, Shelby Lynn, would come find me in the woods, huddle up in my sleeping bag to stay warm, and I would talk to her throughout the night about my woes and my accomplishments. It always felt surreal when I woke up and she wasn't there, so I tried to go back as often as possible just so I could see her again. All the way up until I turned 16. I stopped coming to the mountains as often because I was spending a lot of time with my girlfriend down in the high desert. One day, about a year into our relationship, I decided to take her hiking up one of my favorite canyons. But halfway up the canyon, she slipped and badly twisted her ankle. It was swollen to the size of a grapefruit. I asked her to let me carry her back down, or to let me tear a piece off my shirt to use as a sling, but she refused, so we continued down. About 10 minutes into our hike down, she said she saw something. I asked her what it was, and she said she didn't know, just movement in her peripherals. Then about 5 seconds later, something scared her so badly she almost fell again. I took her back home, and we treated her ankle with a sling and a compression wrap. To this day, she still refuses to acknowledge what happened, and I think perhaps that's for the best. When I was 17, we eventually broke up. Her mother had gotten into an accident drinking and driving, and she was forced to move in with her grandparents. We couldn't keep up the long-distance relationship. I continued going to the mountains for 2 more relationships and 2 more years, but I never brought somebody to the mountains with me during that time. I simply spent my free time with my boyfriend or girlfriend, and the other half in the mountains, dreaming of my childhood dog and bliss. When I was 19, I met a girl who really understood me as a person. Foolishly, I thought that meant she might understand what was happening to me in those mountains. I told her all about my dreams and what happened to my first ex. She wanted to try to see for herself. We left at about 8 p.m. and arrived at the base of my favorite canyon at about 9 p.m. My then-girlfriend and I went hiking up with flashlights and some camping gear, hoping to spend the night. We spent a good 20 minutes setting up a site where I cleared all the flammables in a 5-foot radius and started cooking on my jet boil. We had some dinner, although I can't remember what we ate. I think it was just Uncle Ben's rice and some bread. Then we decided to walk around some more. About 20 minutes into this hike, she stopped dead in her tracks. She had seen something moving just like my first ex. She looked at me and asked me if I saw it too. I hadn't. Then she took another look and let out a small whisper of a scream. She grabbed me and asked me to take her back to our camp so we could leave. Later, she described to me a scraggly, dark, long-haired dog that looked to be about as tall as her, 5'3", and covered in mange and forest debris. She told me it grinned at her, and that its mouth looked almost human. She begged me to never go back there again. She told me whatever was up there wasn't a friend, and that I should never have let it into my life in the first place. I believed her at the time, but now, 5 years out of that forest, and 1 year out of that rocky relationship, I miss the forest more than anything else. I miss my dreams, and I miss the feeling of ease and bliss I got from being there. I want, almost more than anything, to go back there and spend a night, just to feel like that again. Safe, comfortable, and carefree. Should I go back? Maybe just for one night. Or was she right? Is there something here that's dangerous? And if so, why has it never seemed dangerous to me? Why do I feel safest when I'm there? 3. Frankly speaking, I have never experienced any kind of supernatural or paranormal thing, and this is the main reason why I was hesitating before writing this post. Here we go. I am interested in your thoughts and comments on the story. The beginning of the story starts 1.5 years ago. I and my girlfriend went on vacation to an Eastern European country. The exact location is not important, but the site was around 500 kilometers far from our home. We'd agreed with one of my distant relatives that we were going to stay at their house during the last 2 days of the vacation. His house was not far from where we had spent our vacation. To put into context the circumstances, they live in a very small countryside village, in the middle of a vast forest. The village has around 400 inhabitants, so a really tiny one. Most of them are elders, of course. The first day and night went just fine and dandy, but we agreed that we were going to leave the house on our last day because they had to go to another relative or something like that. Meaning, we had to be left on our own in the house for the last night. End of the background story. Things are getting tenser now. So we're not in the house during the daytime. We only arrived back around 7 or 8 p.m. or so in the evening. Just right after we entered the house, we were getting a very strange feeling, both of us simultaneously. There were not any extraordinary or odd things, not even a single voice. All calm, but we felt an utter fear. I mean literally. It came from nowhere, out of the blue, but the feeling was very intense. We even went out to the courtyard to get some fresh air. Went back, but the situation was not getting any better. I cannot explain why we were so frightened or what caused the experience, but it was terrible. We felt like we were in some sort of danger. Even considered leaving the house and going home during the evening. But the home was about 450 kilometers far away, and we were very tired at that point. Eventually, we went back into the house, locked the door, and try to get some sleep. Unsurprisingly, it did not work, because we were completely frightened and we just sat in silence and listened. To be honest, I felt goosebumps when I think about it. There was no voice, no knock, nothing but that very bad feeling like something very bad is going to happen. We were so frightened. Eventually, we fell asleep and nothing happened during the night, but in the morning, we packed our stuff as fast as we could and off we went. We have no explanation for the story. I have never experienced such a thing before, and it was shocking. I know it's not only shocking, but unbelievable as well. I did not mention this experience to my relative, though. 4. So some important background info. My family has owned our property since around the time my mom was little, so for around 42 years now. Growing up, there was this house in our property that was locked up tight and basically falling apart inside that we, unfortunately, didn't have the money to demolish yet. Inside there wasn't really anything of value. There was a massive wasp nest that I swear was the size of a dumpster, at least to my kid brain, and rat nests everywhere. That locked up house had been on the property before my family purchased it, and for a long while after. When we finally got the money to demolish it, I was around 10 or 11. My grandfather went inside a couple times to clean it out a bit to see if there were any valuables in the rat's nests or stowed away elsewhere. He hadn't bothered to check before. During one of his searches, he found this old locket. It was sort of old with a unicorn and rainbow on the front of it with a digital clock inside that was busted. Little kid me loved it and asked to have it, so he let me keep it. For the few days it took for the house to be demolished, I had awful luck. My favorite action figure broke. My favorite SNES game lost all my saved data, etc. Until one night after the house was finally demolished, I had a vivid nightmare that some awful shadow woman monster appeared from where the house had once been, grabbed the locket off my neck through the bedroom window, and took off in a swoosh of smoke. In the morning, I couldn't find the locket at all, and needless to say, I was extremely freaked out. I remembered it and looked for it for about a year for a long time, eventually deciding it was lost. That is until I hit 23 last year. I found it. I found it upstairs in the attic where I know I'd never been because I wasn't allowed to play in there due to splinters, and it being super hot in the eaves. I swear my heart stopped and got this awful, eerie feeling from looking at it. But I also felt this tugging inside that I just couldn't leave it there, so I took it. My luck sucked for a solid week after I found it, but I was, and still am, incapable of getting rid of it. I hid it in a drawer and just don't touch it. I wonder if this pendant is cursed, haunted, or just an object of unfortunate coincidence. 5. I'm a 25-year-old male. I live in Utah, and I'm curious if any of you have seen anything like this before. I'm pretty sure I saw a Wendigo or a skinwalker. I know it sounds strange or crazy. I don't really believe in those things, and I'm regularly skeptical when it comes to the paranormal. This happened to me when I was 17, and in high school and living with my parents. My house at the time was in a very small town. The backyard faced open empty fields and mountains for miles before you reached another civilization at all. My best friend lived next door and shared this field as our backyard in a way. I have to explain that this house sat and was built on a different street that ended in the field with a small cul-de-sac. I think there was supposed to be more houses built down this street to expand the town, but they clearly never got around to it. So this driveway was basically in this cul-de-sac, even though no other houses were built there. I used to stay the night at my friend's house a lot in high school because I didn't have the best relationship with my parents, every once in a while we would wake up to hear dragging and a weird gargling sound from the back porch. His room was a basement room, with the window well to the back porch. It would happen maybe a couple of times a month, but whenever we would gather the courage to check, nothing would be back there. This happened for years. One night haunts my friend and I to this day. My friend was getting ready to move, and we would stay up all night playing games and watching movies. We decided to go on a music drive, just to vibe. So we hopped in his truck with high beams and swung out of the driveway, turning them on towards the field to use the roundabout. The light illuminated this thing. It looked like a person, but it wasn't. It was naked on all fours, abnormally large. Particularly its limbs, it seemed to fold under itself in an unnatural way. Its pale skin clung to it like it had to be stretched onto it. But the part that still sends shivers down my spine is its face. Its jaw hung open to this gaping black maw, like a snake unhinging its jaw to eat. Its black eyes glistened in the light as it looked at us. But just as it turned to see us, it quickly scurried backwards, almost like it was on rewind, into the brush of the field. My friend and I were pale as ghosts. We both looked at each other like, "Did you see that too?" We were shaken. Let's just say we tried to have a good rest of the night, but we couldn't believe what we saw. We ended up just sitting there in his basement, with guns ready, and waiting to hear the gargling and dragging again, but we never did. I now don't live in that town anymore. There are times when I visit there, though. That empty field still feels like it's watching and waiting. Even though I can't see it, I can still feel like it's out there. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 310. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. Please do poke the like button and share the video with friends and family. Just living, because I don't think they have the internet in the afterlife. Don't quote me, though. Okay, let's see. Also, if you yourself have a story you'd like to send in, please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's kingofthecities@gmail.com. You can find that link in the description, as well as links to the Hellfreezer merchandise store, Patreon. I think there's probably still a Facebook down there somewhere. I have been posting on that more recently, although I'm not a huge fan of the site. But, use every tool you have at your disposal to promote your stuff, so that's what I'm doing with that. And that email address can also be used for any other Hellfreezer-related correspondence, like if you have a birthday shout-out, which do try to give me a few days' notice on that. I'll do my best if you send it in last minute, but I generally make videos a few days ahead. Usually a bit more ahead at the moment than usual, because I'm trying to get some other things focused on later in the week. Should I announce this now? Well, basically, I'm thinking of doing a podcast of some kind. I'm just not sure what format it's going to take. So I've been giving a lot of thought to that. Obviously, a narration of some kind. I was thinking of repurposing old videos and putting them into a podcast format, and perhaps that will be part of it, but I don't just want to do that because I feel that may be a bit lazy. So we shall see. I'm open to suggestions, certainly. I do have, I think it's Anchor FM is where I set up my account, so it's probably there. I'll go through them to get it, up and out there. But I will let you know when I have something available. Let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: canned foods that should never be canned. I think we can all agree that canning food is a good way to preserve it. It's a very sensible and practical thing to do. We probably all have canned food in our cupboard in one form or another right now. Certainly soup's a great thing to have. Certain vegetables work very well canned, like baby carrots, I think. Sweet corn is another one. But there are, however, certain companies that have a propensity for sticking like burgers in cans with gravy, which is basically just meat mush. They're not very good. Or we've all seen those awful viral videos with the canned chicken, and it's just ugh. I won't dwell on that one too much, because if you've seen it, it's awful. If you haven't, don't look it up. You don't want to see that. But for the most part, I think canning's a good thing. Canned custard, canned rice, that sort of thing. Like the rice pudding specifically, not just random rice. And they tend to last for a long time. But, like those burgers and the chicken I mentioned, what are some things that, in your opinion, don't really need to last for a long time, or they would have been better stored another way? Please pop your answers in a comment below. Thank you kindly. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.